In the last exercise, we were able to add some placement to the images that hopefully allowed the page to look a little better, but what we really ended up with were pages that weren't really finished. In fact, if we look at the home page, we'll see that this footer really is no longer a footer the way it's placed. It actually shows up to the left of the image, and in reality, this footer with the address and phone number that I'm highlighting right here needs to be put down below the picture in the image, so it stretches across the image much like this navigation bar. And that's the way it used to be before we added the alignment. So we're going to see about fixing that in this exercise. Then also, if we go to the rooms, we remember that each one of the images were associated with one of the rooms, but if you look at the way it's laid out on the page right now, they're not lined up. The images are not right across from the various text that describes the room. And again, we have the same problem with the footer. The footer showing up on the left side of the screen instead of across the bottom where we'd prefer it. So we need to make a couple adjustments here, and if you look at your book on page 136 and 137, it talks about how we're going to do that. We're going to go to the style sheet, lakeland.css, and we're going to go to the footer section. Just before the curly brace in that section, we are going to put a new item in there, right under the margin. And the item is simply going to be clear right. And we're basically telling the HTML through the style sheet that for this footer to appear, it needs to have a clear area to appear, nothing to the right. So we will put the semicolon at the end of the name value pair. Save this. And then I'm going to go back and go to the home page. Let's see how this looks. And it looks a little better. Now the footer is across the bottom of the page instead of where it was just a moment ago before we had that clear indicator there. It was right up against this text. It looks a little funny. So now let's go and see what we need to do to fix the rooms page. You'll remember on the rooms page we have this problem where the text for a specific room is not lining up with the picture for the specific room. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fix that now by working in the style sheet. Now open that up in Notepad. There we are. We're going to look for the top link style rule. Just scan right down here. And there is top link. Just before the closing curly brace, I'm going to add a blank line. And then I'm going to type in this rule, clear right. And that should look familiar to you. Let's see what happens if we save this and then reload the page. All of a sudden we now have a segment of text with a picture to the right. And in each one of those cases, the picture and the text line up to describe the room. I'd suggest you may want to go back into the style sheet, take a look around at that top link selector and rules, and then take a look at the code itself to find out where top link actually applies in the HTML. Remember, anytime you're using a style sheet and you have selectors, you're saying whenever that selector is used in the HTML, follow these specific rules that are outlined in the style sheet. Before we end this video, I want to take a look at the actual page in a web browser, the HTML code, and the cascading style sheet code. Again, I would encourage you to take a look at these documents independently as well. First, we're going to look at the HTML code. Notice that the top link class shows up in several places. It's always showing up surrounding the back to top link. There's one here. Here's one here. Notice the top link class is identified. Here's another one here. Notice the top link class is identified. You'll see where each of the top links or back to top links are right here. So each one of those have the class of top link, and that means that anything in the style sheet that's associated with the top link as a selector has to follow certain rules. Let's go back to the cascading style sheet and take a look at those rules again. The rule we just added was clear right. Remember, what we learned earlier is that when we use the clear right name value combination, we are telling the HTML to not allow anything to be put to the right. So let's take a look at that on the web page again. Now, instead of the back to top showing up right underneath the treehouse text, it clears so there's nothing to the right and moves down below the image. That way it allows the next room to show up below the image as well. Take a look at this code, experiment with it, try a couple different settings, remove and place the clear right name value pair back in the style sheet and see how it works. It's pretty important that you really begin to intuitively understand what's happening in the CSS.